Hello, and welcome to the show. This is our family's true tales of the supernatural. Today I'm going to continue sharing my story that started in 2004 and continued through our current time. It's a story that started with my Type 2 near-death experience and then led to me interacting with ghosts, UFOs, and extraterrestrials. Today I'm going to be talking about another dream I had where I seemed to visit another planet. This was another in a series of dreams I had where ETs seemed to help me visit those other planets. This also marked a distinct change in my circumstances where I was visiting those other planets in my dreams. You'll see what I mean when we get to that part of the story. Yet, as for now, let's go ahead and get started. My previous dream I had, where I visited other planets, scared me quite a bit. The dreams left me wondering what was going on with these strange types of dreams. The last dream I had was where I got hurt in the dream, and when I woke up, I was still feeling the pain. It left me wondering if I really did have an encounter of some kind. I was also left wondering what type of strange dreams I would end up having in the future. I was still experiencing stress from several different situations in my life. I had difficulty dealing with family over some issues, and I had a little bit of stress from a new job I had. I also had difficulty dealing with Christian friends who were acting harsh toward me for believing that God was loving. Even though many of us who had some type of NDE end up believing that God loves us. So I seemed to be stuck with problems of stress and anxiety in my life. I wondered if the stress was causing these dreams, but even the times I had little or no stress at all, I still had these dreams with science fiction themes. So I was starting to wonder if something significant was really happening. At this time in my life, I also started to experience other things that people who had an NDE experienced, which is seeing ghosts and paranormal activity. At this time, I had started to see things turn on by themselves, and I saw things move on their own. A while later, I started to see shadow figures and eventually saw full-body apparitions that looked like real people. Then those apparitions would mysteriously disappear in ways no typical human could ever do. So I also had the stress of trying to figure out how to deal with the ghostly paranormal activity as well. I've got a bit of a better handle on it these days, though. Yet let me get back to the main story, which is about another dream I had with science fiction themes. A few weeks after the previous dream, where I encountered some type of black fog entity, I had another dream. Yet this next dream seemed like a very long, epic story all by itself. I dreamed about the black fog creature in February of 2006. Yet now I had another dream a couple of weeks after that, which was near the end of February or early March, so it was still in 2006. As I was at the beginning of the dream, I was walking along a country road with lots of trees on both sides of the road. I also noticed that it was a bit dark, as if it were the early morning hours. I could see some of the stars over my head, but it looked like things were starting to get a little bit lighter outside. As I kept walking to get further along on the road, I noticed that there were some houses up ahead. As I walked up to that area, I thought I heard some noises that sounded like opening and closing doors. I then noticed that someone came out of the front door of one of the houses. The person acted like they were going to work for the day. I then noticed some more people stepping outside of their houses and walking over to the road. They all started walking down the road in the same direction that I was headed. Then, as I noticed these people walking down the road in the same direction, I started to wonder why no one drove a car or even rode a bicycle. I wanted to ask someone how I could get to the main part of the local town. I walked up to some people and tried to ask them, but I got a strange response. I said something like, "Excuse me, can you show me how to get to the main part of the local town?" The people didn't give me an answer, but remained silent as they only looked at me with strange looks on their faces. Some of them frowned at me, while others had a look of dread and fear on their faces. Some of them also started to walk away from me, and they didn't seem to want to be anywhere near me. I didn't understand why they did this at the time. I noticed a couple of people to my right who hurried their pace to walk over to me as if they wanted to talk to me or help me. I stopped and looked in their direction so we could talk. As I looked in that direction, I thought I heard hard footsteps behind me. It sounded like metal feet clanking on the street or someone wearing metal shoes. I turned around to see what made the sounds of metal feet walking toward me, and I saw a polished, chrome robot. Every part of the robot's body seemed to be polished chrome rectangular boxes. The parts seemed connected by a small slot with flexible black corrugated rubber. I also noticed that the robot had one eye in its head. Its entire head looked like polished chrome as well. I then noticed that it was carrying a short laser shock rifle. At first I hoped to ask the robot for help, and I started to walk over to it. Then the two people looked like they were coming to talk to me, but they grabbed me by my arm to stop me. They then whispered something in my ear. They told me to stop talking or I would die. I thought that seemed a bit harsh to say something like that merely because I wanted to know where the local town was located. So I tilted my head toward them and said, "Huh?" The two people whispered to me to get me to come over toward their house, and then an older man rushed past me. The man rushed past and was so close that he brushed up against me. I wondered why he was moving so fast and why he almost pushed me aside. I then saw him jump in front of the robot, then come to a quick halt, and look the robot in the face while standing still. The man then said to the robot in a calm voice, "Hello." The man kept standing still in front of the robot and blocking the robot from coming toward me. I couldn't understand why he did that. It seemed like these people were either acting very strange or they knew something that I didn't know. The two people whispered an invitation for me to follow them to their house so they could explain. I didn't understand what was going on, but I started to turn to go with them. I then made a slow turn and walked back to their house with them. As I walked toward their house, I noticed something I hadn't recognized before that moment. Everyone in that neighborhood was going to work at exactly the same time. I knew something was going on that I didn't understand, so I wanted these people to explain the situation so I could understand what was going on in this town. So I followed those people back to their house and asked them some questions. They didn't say anything or make a noise until we got into their house and they closed the door. As they closed the door, I asked them what was going on. They remained calm and spoke quietly so they couldn't be heard outside of their house. They started to explain the situation and what was going on in their town. They told me that they were in a penal colony and the robots were the guards that held everyone captive. It seemed like there had been some type of war and all the people of this planet lost the war. So everyone on the planet and on their moon were prisoners and no one was allowed to do much of anything except go to their assigned jobs. They apparently weren't allowed to have or use any electronic devices, and they weren't allowed to talk outside. They even had to keep themselves quiet while they were at home. Otherwise, they could be punished, imprisoned, or executed. The robots gave them specific orders so they could live there in peace. They all had a job to do every day, but when they were outside, they were never allowed to make noise. They couldn't talk, sing, hum, or whistle. The robots considered that sort of thing an attempt to coordinate attacks against them, and so they would not allow it at all. Anyone who didn't comply could get beat, put in solitary confinement, or get shot with an energy beam from the robots' shock rifles. They told me I couldn't make any sound or else I would be in trouble. They also explained that they could walk up to a robot and calmly say hello, but had to be silent after that. That was why the older man said hello to the robot. Then they told me that when they went to their jobs, they would ask for a job for another person, which was me. That way I could fit in with the other people. Anyone caught harboring a fugitive and keeping an adult in their house that didn't have an assigned job could potentially face execution. Apparently there had been some type of war on their planet, and either the machines took over or ETs had robots take over. They did this to stop these people from engaging in any further warfare. Then again, maybe it was to suppress all the people on the planet so they wouldn't engage in intergalactic types of warfare. I thought about the situation a moment, and I was about to join these folks so I could get an assigned job. We were about to walk out of the house so they could go to work, but I asked one more question. I asked what type of penal colony this was and if there was any way we could escape. They said they couldn't escape because there was no air outside because they lived in a giant dome that was shaped like a bubble. They seemed confused that I didn't know this. They thought I should have already known that. I didn't know I was in a dome, though. So I asked what was wrong with the planet, that it didn't have any air. They said that this wasn't a planet, but was a lunar colony that had a dome covering the whole town. I was a bit shocked to hear that. I then stepped outside to look up to see if I could see the top of the dome. It was very high up in the air, and it was difficult to see. Yet as I focused my eyes, I could see that it was a dome, and I hadn't noticed it before that moment. I could still see the stars through the top of the dome, yet this moon seemed to spin to make a day that was a few hours long, like a day on Earth. So it wasn't a tidal-locked moon, like the Earth's moon, where the same side would face the planet all the time. I grew concerned and wondered if I still had my remote control and if I could still teleport out of this place. That was the remote control that I had received from some tall gray ETs before. So I reached my hand in my pocket to pull out the remote control, and I pushed the button, but nothing happened. The people asked what the device was, and I told them it was a remote control for a teleportation device. They told me to keep it hidden in my pocket or I would get in trouble. They told me that the robots didn't allow them to carry around any types of devices like that. They also told me that the robots kept a signal blocker to jam any communications or any type of signals like that. I was starting to see and understand that I was in a very dismal situation, and it seemed like I was trapped. The signal jammer made it impossible for me to escape and teleport back to Earth. At least I couldn't get back to Earth like I did previously when I had seemingly teleported to other planets. If this was a dream, it seemed like I was trapped in the dream and was incapable of waking up. So it seemed like I was in quite a bind, no matter what the situation happened to be. So this was a significant new theme in these dreams where I traveled to other planets. I had now seemingly traveled to another planet, but I couldn't get back. Or should I say it was a moon. Yet in the past I had seemingly freely traveled back and forth to other planets, but now I was stuck. So I couldn't get back to Earth at all. This was the first time I had seen this happen, so that seemed a bit scary. I then started to wonder who would have wanted to stop others from teleporting to and from this planet. I also wondered if someone wanted to stop me personally or stop the tall gray ETs who gave me the device to teleport to other planets. I then started to wonder why they wanted to stop people from teleporting to this planet. Apparently there was a lot more going on than what I knew about. Now, at this point, I didn't even know what part of the galaxy I was located at. I didn't even know if I was in the same galaxy or another galaxy. I had no idea where I was located. I also wondered if the teleportation device had automatically given me some type of universal translator. It sure seemed like I understood these people, and they understood me. So, at this point, I had a lot of thoughts running through my mind, but I gathered my thoughts to speak to the people I stood next to. I asked these people about the signal blocker and where it was located. They told me there was one on the moon in the robot boss's office. Yet the more powerful signal jammer was on the planet. It blocked signals from most of the area around the planet. The robots on the planet could increase the power and jamming ability if the one on the moon malfunctioned, so I couldn't get away unless I figured out a way to escape from the moon. Yet I needed to find a way to get to the planet and turn off the main signal blocker on the planet. If I did that, I could send another signal to turn off all the robots. I realized it would take a while to plan this escape and figure out how to get out of this place. As these folks walked to work, I walked near them and whispered to ask how they would get me a job. They told me they would go to another robot that was the boss of the robot guards. They also told me not to be afraid when I see it because it was twice as tall as the guards. The guards were 6 feet, or about 2 meters, and the boss was 12 feet tall, or about 4 meters. They also mentioned that the boss robot had a boss over him that was twice as tall as the boss robot. So the single boss robot leader of the lunar colony was 24 feet tall, or 8 meters. So we kept walking, and I could see buildings and facilities in the distance. This seemed to be the place where most people seemed to be going to work. The couple walked up to a large metal table with the boss robot and asked for a job for a newcomer. I got assigned to trash pickup and disposal, as well as street cleaning. I figured that it would be an easy job that would allow me to think about a way to escape. As I worked with trash collections, I learned that most trash that wasn't recyclable went to one place. It went into one large dumpster that got picked up and taken down to the planet. Some of it got separated and set aside to be reused for other things. The rest of the trash was either shredded or put inside an incinerator. I found out that every now and then all the excess trash got shipped out on a spaceship bound for the planet. The large dumpster got pushed out of a large airlock and would later get loaded into a spaceship. Then other prisoners on the planet would deal with its contents when it arrived. At that moment, I started to make a plan on how to escape and get to the planet. I had to be careful getting around the town and doing my job because robot guards were all around the place. I also found out that the jumbo-sized dumpster was to be taken out the large airlock by us humans who wore spacesuits. The guy also told me that there is a storage closet on the left side of the main airlock which had some spacesuits. They used the spacesuits to take the dumpster outside of the dome and was left on the lunar surface. Other robots would fly in a spaceship and land outside of the large dome that was covering the penal colony. The robots would then push the large dumpster into their spaceship's cargo bay. Then they would fly the spaceship away and return to the main planet. I then asked those guys how I could get access to the storage closet to get a spacesuit. I planned to get a spacesuit and extra oxygen tanks so I could help push the dumpster outside the dome. I would then hide inside the dumpster that would then get loaded onto the spaceship. It surprised me to learn that the closet with the spacesuits was always left unlocked. The robot guards didn't think anyone would ever try to escape, so they didn't care if it remained unlocked. I also learned when the next time would come to put the dumpster outside the dome, so I wouldn't need a lot of extra oxygen. So the time came when the jumbo-sized dumpster needed to be taken outside the dome at the latest possible time. So I got a spacesuit and some extra small oxygen tanks to bring with me. I also brought a tarp to put over the dumpster so no one could see me if I climbed into it. I put on the spacesuit and helped the other men take the dumpster outside the dome by pulling it with a small lunar buggy. Once we were outside the dome, I climbed inside the dumpster and pulled the tarp over the top of the dumpster. I let the other men know I would be okay hiding in there and that they could leave and go back inside the dome. I then got under the tarp to make sure no one could see me. The other men left as I got under the tarp, and they went back inside the dome's airlock. I tried to rest and go to sleep while I lay there in the dumpster. I wanted to save my air so I could conserve it for a while if I had to wait there for quite a while. Yet a short time later, I felt it jostle around as if the dumpster had started to move. I knew the dumpster was getting pulled inside the spacecraft along with me inside of it. I lay still, and after a moment, I felt jostled again as the spaceship seemed to fly away. I knew the loading bay of the ship had air in it, so I turned off the flow of air from my oxygen tank and took off my helmet to breathe the air inside the spaceship. I tried to relax for a while so I could rest until we got to the surface of the planet. A while later, I heard some noise and felt movement as the dumpster got unloaded from the spaceship. I waited until the sound stopped to be sure all the robot guards had gone away, so I could sneak outside of the dumpster. As the noise died down, and it sounded like the spaceship flew away, I paused for a few minutes to make sure no one was around. I then peeked out from the edge of the tarp to look around, but I didn't see anyone. I then climbed outside of the dumpster and saw a field full of dumpsters. I took off my spacesuit and put it in the dumpster under the tarp. I then walked to the front of the property to a small road and then walked down the road. I walked to a small town and found what looked like a small convenience store. The store had what looked like soda machines in a notch on the right side of the building. The building almost looked like a small corner had been cut out of the right front corner. The notch in the building was the perfect size for the soda machines to fit perfectly into place. I noticed that there were a few soda machines. The one further from the front of the building seemed to be in the small notch in the building. The machine faced forward towards the other two machines. The one further back sat in the notch with 3 walls wrapped around the soda machine. I thought I could pull the soda machine out from between the 3 walls and hide or live in the spot behind it. I could pull it back a bit to conceal myself there. I could live there like a homeless person, so that's what I did. I pulled it out, and when I got behind it, I pulled it in toward the alcove a bit so no one could see me there. I would sneak out of the alcove at night and look around the area to find electronic parts that had been thrown away. I looked around at the local trash dump next to the depot where they stored the dumpsters. I also begged for food from people and employees at the small store. I found a few parts for electronic devices now and then. I would try to make a remote control signaling device that could turn off the main signal jammer and turn off the robots. I also wondered if I could send a combined signal that would upload a short program to turn off all the robots. Then the short program would make the robots stop, and the robots would send another signal to turn off the signal jammer. I collected some remote controls, some radios, and some other electronic devices. I mixed and matched parts. I used several parts from several electronic devices to put together one device I could use. I even had a type of device that was like a radio that could play music. I also found some recordings that I played at low volume at night. No one further than 3 to 5 feet away could hear them, and it helped me pass the time as I made my device. The day came when I finally finished putting the device together. I wanted to test it out by walking up to a robot and pushing the button to see if it would turn the robot off or make it stop functioning. So I walked out from behind the soda machine where I had been living, but I tripped over a radio and it turned on. It started playing music at high volume, and I rushed to turn it off, but I couldn't get it to stop. A robot guard that was near the edge of the street started to walk in my direction and was pointing its weapon at me. I kept fumbling around with some buttons, but I couldn't get it to stop playing the loud music. The button to turn it off didn't seem to work, and I couldn't turn it off or turn the volume down. I then turned to the robot guard while pointing my device at it, and the robot was now within 3 paces of me. I then pushed the button on my device, and the robot took another step toward me and pointed its energy rifle directly at me. I thought my device didn't work, so I flinched and squinted my eyes. I expected to get shot with a blast of energy from the robot's energy weapon. I paused and stood there a moment, but then I noticed nothing happened. I noticed that I didn't get shot, so I looked up and saw the robot still pointing its gun at me as if it tried to shoot. I was still cringing a bit, but I noticed that the robot wasn't walking toward me anymore. It seemed to have completely stopped. So I stepped aside out of the way from its weapon. I then noticed that it didn't move to point its gun at me again, so I knew I had succeeded and had turned the robot off. So I went back to unplug the other radio so it couldn't make any more sound. As I unplugged the radio, I noticed a lot of people standing around with scared looks on their faces. I then told them that I had made a device to turn the robots off and turn off the main signal jammer. I then told them that they were all safe and they didn't need to worry about the robots anymore. I then told the people to look around to make sure the other robots got turned off as well. I then saw a few other robots across the street and further down the street, and they all seemed to be standing still. I then breathed a big sigh of relief. My signal had produced another signal that went to all the robots and turned off all the robots. I wondered if my teleport control would work, and I wondered if the main signal jammer had been turned off. I thought that if it hadn't been turned off, I would need to walk to the main building where it was located and turn it off manually. At that moment, my hand touched my teleport remote control in my pocket, and I touched the button. I then saw a flash of light, and I woke up in my bed again. I assumed that I had made a way for the tall gray ETs to bring me back again, if that's what was happening. If this was a mere dream, I was glad to be awake because it was a scary dream. It seemed like I had the constant threat of robots shooting me, and that was looming over me at all times when I was in the dream. I was also starting to get the distinct impression that these were more than mere dreams induced by stress. It didn't make sense that I kept having dreams with science fiction themes over and over again. I also noticed that in the dream, it seemed like I lived on that moon and that planet for several days. It was strange that it seemed like I could live for days in one dream. Yet as I awoke, I noticed it had only been one night here on Earth. I pondered whether this might be evidence that these were more than mere dreams. These dreams had occurred during the night, only a few weeks after the previous dream in February of 2006. Yet I was noticing a distinct pattern emerging. These dreams always had what seemed like science fiction themes, and it always had something to do with ETs or other worlds. I also noticed that I kept having these dreams whether I had stress or didn't have any stress. So I was starting to seriously consider that this was more than mere dreams. Throughout the next several days, I kept thinking about these dreams and wondering if there was some greater purpose to them. I wondered if the tall ETs were helping me visit other worlds, or if they were using me to spy on other worlds for them. I also started to wonder what would happen the next time I had another one of these strange science fiction types of dreams. I also wondered what I should do if I got stuck on another planet and was incapable of getting back. Yet it was only a few more weeks, and I had another dream on the night between March 16th and 17th of 2006. It was another dream with science fiction themes. I'll give you a little hint and a teaser about the next episode. I visited another planet, and I got into another sticky situation. The situation included some ET spacecrafts, more robots, and more high-grade technology. This is going to be a real banger, so you'll need to tune into the next episode for the rest of the story. Yet as for now, please remember to always click the like button to show that you appreciate these stories. You might also want to click subscribe or follow on Rumble so you can catch more of my stories in the future. You might also want to click the bell on YouTube and set it to all so you make sure you don't miss an episode. Feel free to leave a comment below and tell me what you like about the show. If you watch these videos and you are thirsty for more, just let me know in the comments section below. Make sure to tell me that you want more videos. You're also free to tell me about some of your own paranormal stories or real-life encounters or sightings. Let me know if I can share your stories on an episode and possibly make some illustrations to go along with it. If it's okay for me to share your story, please give me a long, detailed account of the story with as many details as you can remember. Yet, as for now, I hope to see you in the next episode where I'll continue this storyline about my eerie off-world adventures. So, goodbye for now.